Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's Sunday, and the bracket is out. MV Pete Coles, Rich Sutter. We are coming in tonight just to bring you the bracket. A rare, rare Sunday live event out of In the Zone here, and we are absolutely pumped up. The bracket's out, and we are here ready to break it down, give you exactly what we thought they did, which way the committee went, why you think they went that way, and then we're going to actually go through tonight on this show, and we're going to have pen in hand, first time through, we're going to do my bracket. Now, before we enter into this venture, full disclaimer, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at this. And a while back, I talked a little bit about why I'm not good at this. I didn't go a whole lot of into depth with it about why exactly I'm not good at it. I said for a lot of different variant reasons, people's bracket blow up. One is the unpredictability of what we're doing right here. This is, teams going up against each other that haven't seen each other, teams that are hot, teams that are not, teams that are rising, teams that are dropping. And you have to kind of, make your way through that. And all of these myriad of choices, it really, really becomes very difficult. One of the reasons that I think some people have a little trouble with their bracket is because they don't have enough information. And one of the reasons I think I struggle with my bracket is because I think I have too much information. My brain is rattling around inside my head right now like a lottery ball cube. I've watched nothing but basketball, as promised, from Thursday on. Nothing but basketball. And my, oh my, we're only doing college basketball tonight, folks. We're only doing the bracket. But the lead up into the bracket is the conference tournament champions. Mm-hmm. And my, oh my, that did not disappoint.
UConn got a little slow start there.
That did not
Holy
disappoint.
Cow.
It was a slow start for UConn, and they managed to prevail, though.
Yeah.
They managed to come out of it. First championship for them, outright Big East championship for them in a long time in the regular season, then to follow it up with a tournament win. They haven't done that in a while. Danny Hurley's walking on sunshine right now. We're going to get into this a little bit. I don't know. I'm going to go right off the get with the bracket and say I think the committee, by and large, did a pretty good job. I was anti-Michigan State all week long, and I'll stay anti-Michigan State all week long. But if you go through a process like this, you go through it all the way through, and if there's only really one or two things that I can point out and I say, wow, you missed it there, and for variant reasons, obviously, then I think we're okay. If we get to, man, there's 5, 6 teams in there and everybody's shaking their head going, what are they doing with this? What are they doing with that? I don't think we have that here. I think where we're going to have some exploration into the mindset of this committee is with some of the seeding. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through the show. But we put out earlier today our 4 number 1 seeds. And as we talked about on our show for a very, very long time, the 1, 2, and 3 in college basketball didn't change much this year. You had your UConn, you had your Purdue, you had Houston all the way through.
Yep.
Now, conference tournaments really were revealing a little bit because UConn prevailed all the way through Madison Square Garden. Boy, can the Husky fans show out when they want to really get up and go. They great support to the team in New York. And Madison Square Garden, I grew up in New York, obviously I'm biased, but what a mecca. What a mecca for basketball that they have. They have the A-10 in Brooklyn, and then at the same time, they're having the Big East in the Madison Square Garden. So that's absolutely on fire basketball. A couple of days right there. People in New York just love that stuff and really, really support and get out to the tournament. St. John's has a great advantage there, but UConn really, really does a great job there in getting their people out. And for them to win their tournament straight out, they were one of the 3 teams that we've talked about being the elite 1, 2, 3 kind of triad that we've had all year. They're the only one that won their conference tournament. So you had Purdue get knocked off by Wisconsin, and some of that defense that Purdue played looked a little bit like some of the tackling that was in the Super Bowl that we talked about. We can talk about that a little bit later. And the other team that had been up there all along, Houston, my goodness, they absolutely got beat down badly, very, very badly by a team that we've been talking about all year. And I think we're going to have to look and see how this whole thing works out now, because I haven't really gone through it, folks. This is honest. We're doing it for the first time
We're
ever.
doing it live, yeah.
But all year long, I've liked the Cyclones of Iowa State. And boy, did they show out in that Big 12 championship game. They absolutely took Houston, who everybody had as a 1 or a 2, in the entire country, never alone a seed, a 1 or 2 seed. They had them as the 1 or 2 in the country. And Iowa State dismantled them, absolutely dismantled them. Again, what we talked about with Houston all year long is the offensive side. Jamal Sheed in that game was like 3 for 17 from the floor. They had some guys that really struggled from the floor, and Iowa State can really, really match them physically and plays great defense. I thought on the offensive side of the ball, the reason Iowa State won that game is they're a little bit better. They shot the ball a little bit better. We talked about Houston having that issue all year long. That's kind of where it went. Okay.
I love some of the teams you gave love to in your top 25 all season, or some that just came in recently, were a surprise to the people on the studio set for CBS. Oh, like McNeese State coming out of nowhere. Oh, this is a great team, but okay. None of your top 25s gave them any love all season long.
We put them in.
Yeah.
We put them in. And Will Wade is being, as we talk about carousel, we'll talk about that probably Thursday in greater detail. But the carousel spinning wild as it is right now, Will Wade's name is being mentioned very, very prominently for a lot of the jobs that are out there right now. And the job that he's done at McNeese is nothing short of a miracle. 30 wins is 30 wins. I want you to think about that.
Yeah.
30 wins. That's rare. There's not a lot of teams in the country ever that have done that. And so we're going to watch this team also. When you watch them in the bracket, I think they got an okay game too, because Wade's been at high level. He's coached at a high level. He coached LSU. He's been in the NCAA tournament. He beat my St. Bonaventure Bonnies. And he's a coach that's proven. And so McNeese gets up against somebody. They have absolutely nothing to lose, and they can provide a big, big challenge for somebody going forward. I guarantee you that. I think you're going to see some of the things that we talked about here. There's some really, just at the very brief look that I took at this whole thing, when I looked at the bracket very quickly before I came over, I was looking on my phone, which I find a little difficult. I prefer to look at it at the whole on a piece of paper. But when I looked on my phone a little bit, I looked at some of the first-round matchups, and wow, there are some first-round matchups here that are absolutely doozies. There are some 9-8 games here that are going to keep people up all night trying to figure it out. And as I said, full disclaimer, we really don't know. We really don't know. All I can tell you is I have watched a lot of games this year. I'll have a pretty decent feel for some of this stuff, but we don't really know. Now,
all right, shall we start with the play-in games?
We can go right to the play-in games.
All right, let's take a look. They're on your screen.
All right, again, this is something I don't get and I don't like.
Okay.
All right. There's not much about this tournament I don't like, but more and more, they're always creeping. They're always trying to do something, that, oh, look, we got a this and a that. You didn't need it. It wasn't broken. You shouldn't have tried to fix it. This is what they did to try and fix it. Now we got all of this play-in game where now these teams will play games, and they'll go and they'll match up, and the winners then get to actually go into what is regarded as the NCAA tournament. They'll then be regarded as one of the 68 teams and go on. Now, obviously, they've made the NCAA tournament, but this is, and we're going to talk about this a little bit again, powers of math destruction, the destruction of the math that they bring into this. These play-in games that you're looking at right here on the screen, folks, you're looking at 2, 4, 6, 8, okay? All that does is stretch out and allow them to bring in more Power 5 teams that haven't had good years. That's all that does. So some of these teams, you're looking at Wagner, you're looking at Howard, they both won their conference championship. They both finished and won their conference title. Wagner out of the clear blue sky. I would say they might have finished 4th, 5th somewhere in their conference. Now you got Howard. They came out. They had a great game yesterday. I got to watch the end of that game. They had a great game, okay? Now I can understand those two teams playing each other. But now move over to the next bracket where you're looking. It's Colorado State and Virginia. Now both of those teams I think are pretty good teams. They play at a high level of basketball. Now, why you would tell me that Colorado State isn't playing Wagner and Virginia isn't playing Howard, I really couldn't possibly explain that to you. In a tournament bracket setting, if you want to go through all those 8 teams, okay, then you should be ranking them 1 through 8. And there's no way to tell me that Colorado State and Virginia came up matched up next to each other. Because you're going to look at the next bracket, Grambling and Montana State. They're on the same level as Howard and Wagner. They are the lowest of Division I rankings-wise. They're way, way down. If you look at Grambling, they had a great year. Again, another team, we love March Madness, another team that came up and really, really rose like a phoenix in the ashes and then came out and took the bid. Love it. Montana State's been very, very consistent in their league. But again, they've been in it now a couple of times in a row. They've been in the NCAA tournament, I believe, 4 times in a row. Do they belong in a playoff game? Why do they have to come to a playoff game? Who decided that?
Also, why is there no play-in game for the East? Only region that doesn't have a play-in game is the East region.
Right. And now go one more step over, and you're looking at Colorado and Boise State. So if you look at the 2 bracket and you look at the 4 bracket there, they're both loaded with really, really good teams. And all of those teams would be considered 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that formula. And Howard, Wagner, Grambling, and Montana State, if you went in reverse, maybe would be 5, 6, 7, and 8. For sure. They shouldn't be playing each other. And again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I don't think this thing helps the NCAA tournament at all. Get to 68 teams. Make the tough choices. Let's get to business. But again, you start with this stuff. It's just to create more television games.
Oh, yeah.
More money. Go ahead, Pete. Go ahead, Pete. You know it's there. You know what it's all about, folks. It's all about these playing games and all this other stuff. It's all about the money. They want to just cash those checks. They want to get everybody fired up about it. But absolutely, I think, Wagner and Howard, under the present rules, are automatic qualifiers.
You're right.
They have no business being in this play-in game. Now, if you tell me you want to make Michigan State play in this game, I'd be 100% for that because I think they have no business being in the tournament at all, let alone a 9 seed or whatever seed they gave them. They have no business being in this tournament at all. And if you tell me that they don't belong in this group right here over Virginia, Colorado State, and some of the other teams that are in there, Boise State, Colorado, they all had really, really good years. At one time, Colorado was close to undefeated. They were one of our undefeated teams. So this is the stuff that gets to you, and so if we go through it, all right, we're going to pick teams there, all right? I'm going to take Wagner over Howard.
Okay.
All right? They're playing pretty good basketball right now. They had a good run. I think that's a fairly even game, and it is good. One of them will get to advance, but it's a fairly even game. This next game right here is a play-in game. Are you kidding me? This is like an 8-9 game. These are 2 really, really good teams.
Well, notice that they're playing for the 10 seed,
Right.
which makes no sense to me.
I have zero understanding of this. This is what kind of irks me about the tournament, and I really don't.
Why aren't these all 16 playing for 16 seeds?
And to be honest with you, Pete, nobody really wants to look at this until you're ready to go full 68. Here's my bracket. Everybody goes. Now you got all of this stuff going on before even the first round actually takes place, and it's just no good. I don't like it. But if I got to pick one, Colorado State and Virginia, man, I don't know. That's a really, really tough one to pick. I'm going to go with the Colorado State Rams there. I know Virginia's pretty good, but they haven't had a great year. They haven't had a great year, and they're listing them as a 10 seed somehow in this whole thing, in this menagerie. They're both 10 seeds.
Yeah, why are they playing for the 10 seed game? You know what I mean? Like
I
thought the whole point of the playing game was to play for the 16th seed.
Right.
And now they changed it up this year.
And so you have 4 16s, right? You would think that these would become your 4 16s.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work. I'm with you, Pete. Mind-boggling.
Makes no sense.
All right, so we got
me.
Grambling and Montana State. I'm going to go I think that's a pretty easy one. Montana State.
Which that is a 16.
That's going to be a game where they can win that game and get going. And then on the other side, Colorado and Boise State, another, just like Colorado State and Virginia. That's like a 10 set. It's one of those good games. That's like a 10-7. I'm going to pick Colorado there, though. I've liked Colorado all year long. I've seen them a little bit. They have some guys on their team that are talking about being high-level pros, some guys on their team being high-level pros. They have a couple of guys on their team that'll be on our in the zone draft board. So watch out for Colorado. I think that some of these teams right here that you're looking at, if the NCAA selection committee really wanted them in, they shouldn't be in playing games.
Right.
They shouldn't be in playing games, and especially if they're automatic qualifiers. If that's how the road through, that's how you get in. Because is the NCAA selection committee going to tell me that when Wagner has a great year, they're putting him in? Because I don't see High Point here.
Right.
I don't see Indiana State here. And so I get the whole thing, but when you're putting Michigan State in with all the losses they have, we're going to talk about that just a little bit later. But, man, they got a bunch of losses. Okay, so where do we go next, Pete?
Let's go to East, top half of the bracket.
Okay.
So the top 8. The first 8 games in the top left-hand corner of the East.
Yep. So I see we got UConn and Stetson. All right. I think that's a pretty good matchup for UConn coming out. I think UConn's playing really well, but
are they giving UConn preference because they're like the number 1 team in the country? Is that why there's no playing game in the East?
I think
that's the only thing I can think of.
Might have something to do with it, but to be honest with you, I thought UConn, after all of this, having won their tournament, we had Auburn as the other number 1 seed.
Yep.
So we had UConn, Houston, Purdue, and Auburn was our number 1 seed. But of all of those 4, you have to pick who's your ultimate
overall
number 1.
Yeah.
And after winning the Big East tournament and coming through it, and the other 2 losing their tournaments, I had UConn being the overall number 1. This is not an overall number 1 bracket. They got screwed, if you ask me. UConn did. And when we go through the other brackets, I think you're going to see what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Look at some of the teams in this bracket that they have, and you're going to see, because this was an absolute misseeding by the committee. There's no business for Auburn to be a 4 seed. No business at all for them to be a 4 seed. They should be a lot higher than that. I had them as my final number 1. There's no way, as the SEC champions, winning the tournament, becoming the automatic qualifier for one of the best conferences in the whole thing, I think they deserved a little bit more respect than getting a 4 spot. I really do. And then you look up there at San Diego State. I don't think they should have been as high as they are. And then you have Northwestern, Florida Atlantic got in. There's some a little bit of shake and rattle and roll here as far as some of these at-large bids, because we're going to talk about that. All right, but UConn Stetson, we got to pick the game, Pete. Let's go with UConn there.
Most of the studio guys for CBS had UConn going all the way.
Yeah, I don't think I will. We're going to find out. But we're going to go UConn right there. And now you got Florida Atlantic and Northwestern. That's going to be a very, very good game. People are not aware of how good Northwestern is. They had Purdue down at the buzzer and almost beat them. Florida Atlantic, still a very, very good team. But I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to take Northwestern there. That'll be a big upset. This is the kind of thing that'll knock your bracket right away.
Sure, yeah.
Knock your bracket right off into tomorrow, right here in this region. San Diego State, UAB. I really like San Diego State as an organization, as a team. Haven't had a great season this year, but I'm going to go with them. I'm going to take them over UAB. UAB beat Temple today, got in, had a good season. I just don't see it. Auburn and Yale. I want to apologize to my good friend Victoria Chun, who is the AD at Yale, but the Bulldogs are going home early because I think Auburn's got the business. I think you're going to see in this bracket, like I've been in the shoes of where you're sitting there on Sunday and you're waiting for a team to come up. And I remember sitting back in time, I didn't want to see Rick Pitino's Kentucky team because they could just blow you out and it could get really, really ugly. You would say, okay, there's still a number 1 seed, but God, they'll play a style that we might be able to stay in the game with. They'll play a style that we might be able to hang around with. And so when you're watching these things unfold, If you're Yale and you just saw Auburn come out, I say that might not be a really good style fit for Yale because Auburn's super athletic, just coming off a huge SEC victory. And Auburn could present some problems in that bracket for UConn. I think UConn is very, very strong, but the double repeat's really, really hard.
Sure.
It's a really, really difficult one. So I think we're finished over there. We'll take Auburn over Yale, and we'll move on.
We'll look at the bottom half of the East.
This is, I think, going to be one of the most difficult games to call because I'm a big A-10 fan and because I watched the entire Bonaventure-Duquesne game. This one's going to be a really, really tough one to call because I like BYU. I like their shooting, but this Duquesne team's really, really junkyard dog. This Duquesne team's really, really tough. So as much as I want to kind of stick with BYU, and think they're going to be good, I'm calling for a first-round A-10 upset right there, and I'm calling Duquesne going to take BYU there. I'm going out on a limb there, folks.
All right.
Trying to be controversial. Illinois didn't get any favors here. Illinois did not catch the seed that I thought that was appropriate for them, and now Morehead State's pretty good. I don't think they're good enough to beat Illinois, but I'm going to take Illinois.
So no
It's
upset
going to be a close
there.
game. No,
Okay.
It's going to be a close game, but I think they're going to be okay. Washington State and Drake. This is where you get into those middle round games and somebody's going home that I think are two really, really good teams. I think Washington State is really well coached, and I think they got a really, really good team. But I like this Drake team too. So this is probably, in this first go-round, might be my hardest decision to make right here on this game. But I'm going to go with Drake because I like Drake. I think Drake could be a surprise team this year. I'm going to say it right now, and obviously anything can go wrong. That's a big, big first game for them. Really, really tough game. You got Washington State, who's playing very, very good basketball. This next game we can kind of skip through because I think it's going to be a quick one. I think Iowa State's, to me, I've been talking about the Cyclones all year long.
Yep.
Been really, really high on them, and I think they're going to be pretty good. Go ahead, Pete. Let's roll it.
All right, let's take the West top half.
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina's got to wait for their play-in.
Yep.
So that is that an advantage or a disadvantage? They got to scout both teams now.
Yeah, you and I had this conversation once before. They're
scouting Howard and Wagner.
Right. So when you get now, they're a number one seed.
Yep.
But they're now going to wait to see who their opponent is after this play game. Now, both of those teams are not in North Carolina's category, so they're happy about that. They're not looking at the Colorado State bracket. They're not looking at that other game. So they're going to wait, and they're going to get somebody good. But you're 100% right, Pete. They got to wait. And this is what they're going to be doing. They're going to split their group up, and they're going to go half and half. Half the coaches are going to move over here, and they're going to cover one team, and the other half's going to cover the other, and they're going to be going after both of them all week long. This is, the FDU shook everybody up last year. So right now you got all of these major conferences really, really focused on that first round game where they wouldn't necessarily have had to in the past because in the tournament we went for ever without having a 16 seed beat a 1 seed. We went forever. Mm-hmm. UMBC was the first team to do that to Virginia. Then it happened again when you had Purdue get tussled up with FDU. All right, so now you got that happen 2 times already. That's why these bigger units are going to be on alert. And so a Wagner or a Howard who comes through there, they're playing hot. They got nothing to lose. It's going to put these big teams on a little bit of alert. You're going to see some pretty good stuff happening there. So North Carolina is going to play the play-in game. They're going to play, we put in Wagner, right?
I believe that's who you took, yeah.
Yep, so we're going UNC all the way over. I think UNC is pretty good. They could get nicked up in the wrong environment here, but I think they're going to go. So Mississippi State, Michigan State right here. I've been down on Michigan State. I'm going to back it up. I like Mississippi State. They are really, really athletic. They looked good in their tournament the other day. I thought they played very, very well. They have a couple of guys on that unit that we're going to be looking at are in the zone draft board as well because they have some athletic players and they're really, really play with a good intensity. I like the way they went at it. All right, so now we're at St. Mary's and Grand Canyon.
You've been pretty high in St. Mary's this year.
I've been high on St. Mary's this year, but this is a bad matchup for St. Mary's. This Grand Canyon team, they got into a fight last night at the end of their conference tournament. Some guy went in and had a dunk when the game was done, and then some guy threw a ball and pushed this guy and pushed that guy. Almost had a bunch of technicals assessed, but they do play with a certain chip on their shoulder.
Sure.
And St. Mary's has a bunch of guys that are very skilled and play, a more of a European game. So if Grand Canyon gets into them, I think that could be an upset in the first round, but I'm not calling it.
So Grand Canyon plays gritty and St. Mary's plays finesse.
Yeah. Well, St. Mary's has some guys that are tough. They got a couple of Australian players that play really, really tough, but their style is generally more of a European style where they're going to spread the floor, shoot a lot of threes, and if they shoot really well, you're in trouble. If they don't shoot really well, they're in trouble. So I think that Grand Canyon game, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of people pick them, but St. Mary's is very good and very well coached. I think they'll survive it, but, man, that ain't a good opener. All right, again, Alabama, College of Charleston. College of Charleston is very good, had an extremely good year. Alabama, this is not a good draw for them. They're in a little bit of a tough spot here. I'm going to go with Alabama because I want to see them play St. Mary's, but my goodness, that's no love.
There's no guarantee, right?
That's no love right there. These lower level conferences are good basketball. These lower level conferences play good basketball.
All right, let's look at the bottom half of the West.
Okay, beautiful. Pete, you're doing a great job tonight, man. This is on the live, ready to go, and this was just pulled out of our hat, folks. So
came in and did a lot of prep at 6 o'clock.
Pete was here early in the morning. I just rolled out of the tavern after celebrating St. Patrick's Day with my wife. Okay, this is a tough one right here. Clemson and New Mexico. I haven't really been that high on Clemson all year, although I think in the tournament they could get hot because they could shoot well. But I think they're going out in the first round here. I'm going to go with New Mexico right here.
Wow, that's a big upset.
This is Richard Pitino Jr.'s team, New Mexico.
Yep.
And I like them. All right, this is another one of those things that I talk about that might not be a stylistic matchup that goes and bodes well for an upset. We talked about Yale getting stuck with Auburn. That's not a good matchup. Colgate, kind of hoping for a team that's not quite as athletic and going to push the floor up and down as this. Baylor is exactly what they didn't want to see in that regard. I think it's going to be a tough one for them. I'm going to push up Baylor, although Coach Langle does a great job. Really does a great job there. I know that the Baylor guys aren't going to sleep on this one. And I don't think Colgate, I'm going to pick it up a little bit closer to me. No, they got a 14 seed this year. They've moved up, usually a 16, bounce up to 15. They got a 14 seed this year, and I guess so. All right, so now you got Dayton and Nevada. I don't know what's happened to this Dayton team. I watched them in the Atlantic 10. They got bounced out. I was a little surprised that the committee picked them, and then I was really, really surprised that they gave them the seed that they did, number 7. I'm really, really surprised at that. But I have to go out and offer mea culpa to my good friend Jim Englehart down in Washington, D.C., who told me the A10 will not be a one-term bid. This will not be a one-term bid this year. They will get multiple bids. I told him he was crazy. I lost some Miller Lights, and most likely they'll be paid during reunion of this year at the alma mater, St. Bonaventure. All right, so I'd gladly take the loss there for the A10, Dr. E, and so we move on. But I'm taking Nevada there. That's Stevie Alford. They got a good team. That Mountain West Conference is very, very good. Arizona, Long Beach State. Not many people know that much about Long Beach State, but they're pretty good. I don't think this is a great fit for Arizona, but I do think they get by them. So I think Arizona gets by Long Beach State and rolls. Okay, we're cooking this thing. All right, Houston.
We're taking a look at the South.
Oof. Man, oh, man, oh, man. Houston and Longwood. Boy, Longwood, you get into the tournament, and they've been in there a couple of times just recently after coming up from Division II. Great job by Longwood. Great job by their coaching staff, but you're going home soon, Longwood. Houston Cougars are tough. They're going to be wounded after that big beatdown they caught on national television to Iowa State. And unfortunately, they're going to take it out on you, Longwood. All right, so now we go with Nebraska and Texas A&M. Another game that I'm really, you got to flip a coin here.
8-9, yeah.
Nebraska, Texas A&M. Both teams, I thought Nebraska solidly in. I didn't really have Texas A&M in. I thought they were a little bit of a surprise team. I thought Providence might have had a better resume than them. But right now, Nebraska, Texas A&M. I'm going to go with the mayor, and I'm going to go with Hoiberg. Nebraska. I'm going to call Nebraska there, Pete. All right, Wisconsin and James Madison.
5 versus 12.
This is a little bit better matchup than you think. I watched this James Madison team. They're well coached. Wisconsin wound up going all the way through and getting through the Big Ten tournament, but I'm taking James Madison in this game, and I'll tell you why. First game of the year, they dismantled Michigan State. They handled Michigan State. I think they can play with a big team, a Big Ten team, and right now they got a big kid inside that's pretty tough. So we're going to go with James Madison here. A little bit of an upset Central. We'll rock the boat there for sure. All right, now we're up to Duke and Vermont, right? Okay,
Yep.
So I think this is again, stylistically, John Becker been in the tournament so many times with Vermont, a standard up there that's an unbelievable standard that he has set. A really, really great job by that coach, their program, everything about it. And then you come out, and after being in the tournament 4 times, you get matched up with Duke. I don't know. That's a tough one. Tough one to swallow there for the Catamounts. But I think Duke beats them. This is a big, big game right here. This next bracket. You're gonna see some very good games in this bracket if you go with because we're done in that one, Pete.
Yep. Let me just hold on one second. I screwed up a little bit, so let me just fix that.
Okay. We
can go to the top half of that. I just got to grab the bottom.
All right. I got Texas Tech and NC State next.
As you can see, I didn't grab it in the right spot. So
all right. So I'll
work on fixing that. You start talking.
I'll go through verbally. This is one of those games, folks. I don't know. Texas Tech, NC State. Texas Tech's had a very good year. They're a very, very good team. They're coming up against maybe the hottest team in the entire country. Not many teams can do what this NC State team has done and win 5 straight games, take the ACC title, and I believe they've knocked off Duke and North Carolina on their way to that championship. So they're a really, really hot team right now. That's a really, really tough pick. I'm going to go with NC State just because they're hot and they're playing at a high level. I like them. I think Texas Tech's kind of fallen. You got Kentucky and Oakland. This is no picnic for Calipari. All right, I think they're going to survive, but it's no picnic. Kentucky survives there, though. Okay? Now you got to go back to one of those play-in games, right? Florida is going to get the winner of Colorado State and Virginia, right?
Yep.
We had Colorado State. And I like Florida there. Florida's good. Florida can shoot. They lost in the SEC final to Auburn today. Did not play a great game, but they have a good team. They shoot the ball well. And they're very, very well coached. Very, very well coached. I think Colorado State is too. Marquette, Western Kentucky. A lot of people were real high on this Marquette team. Went into the NCAA, into the Big East tournament without their point guard, Tyler Kolek. If Kolek comes back healthy any way around it and he can move and groove, I think they're going to be good. But if he's not with them, they can go out to Western Kentucky right here because Western Kentucky's not that bad.
15-2?
I'm going to stick with Marquette. Yeah, but, it's a lot riding on Kolek.
Yeah.
There's a lot riding on Mr. Kolek, see if he gets back healthy because that's how they got bounced out in the Big East tournament. Okay.
All right, let's
so
take a
now we
look at
got
the Midwest.
Purdue with another play-in game, and that's Montana State. And I think you're going to have Purdue. I'm going to say that we'll find out how this goes. I don't know if we'll get through the whole bracket tonight, but maybe we will. But I'm going to say Purdue has a really good chance to go to the Final Four this year. I think their bracket's pretty good. Okay, you got Utah State and TCU. This is a great matchup. Really, really good matchup. Jamie Dixon, Utah State, the Aggies, they're a really, really good team. I've been talking about them all year. I am going to go with Utah State there. And in that top bracket, if you have Purdue against Montana State, obviously I'm going with Purdue.
Okay.
Now you have Gonzaga and McNeese. No picnic here for Mark Few. Absolutely no picnic here for Mark Few. They could get jammed up here. I'm going to go with Gonzaga because they have the proven ability to be in that tournament. But I'll tell you right now, that could be an upset special written all over it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because McNeese has been surprising people all season.
And they only have a couple of losses, And I'm going to go with Kansas over Samford there, which sets up a really, really good game. You're seeing some of these setups here. Kansas and Gonzaga would be a great matchup, great coaching matchup. South Carolina and Oregon. I have been really, really high on South Carolina all year long. I think they got a little bit of the heart of a junkyard dog. I like them a lot. But boy, did they get the rubber hose from the search committee. I thought they were a really, really solid team. This Oregon team's about as hot as it comes. The NC State and Oregon are both on fire. I'm taking Oregon right there, and I'm going to give you a name to watch throughout this tournament. His name is Enfali Dante. Plays for Oregon. He's a big man. He's tough. I think he could be a difference maker in that game. I'm going with Oregon there. I like South Carolina, but man, oh man, oh man, that's a matchup. That's a tough one. One of a really, really good team's going out.
Yeah.
Really, really good team is going out. So Texas gets Colorado in that last play-in game.
Yep.
Thankfully. Oh, my God. I like Colorado there. I didn't think Texas belonged in this tournament at all.
Wow.
There's two teams that I'm going to go out on a limb and say they had no business being in this tournament, let alone seated where they were. Texas and Michigan State. Absolutely zero business being in this tournament, in my opinion.
All right, you jumped over Creighton, Akron.
We did. Okay, we're going Creighton there. Everybody knows I like Creighton. That's going to set up a great game, Oregon and Creighton. All right, and go back to Colorado now, Pete, with Tennessee St. Peter's.
Yep.
And I'm going to pick Tennessee right there. Tennessee got pounded in their tournament. All right, so you want to go right back up to the top where we began?
Sure.
Okay, so that puts us at UConn and Northwestern.
Okay.
Okay, so you got UConn and Northwestern. I think Northwestern's pretty good, but they're going to be a little bit out of their element right there, and I'm going with Connecticut. And then we got San Diego State and Auburn. This is a fabulous, if it turns out this way, this is a fabulous matchup. I'm going to send out a little bad message to the San Diego State fans. Aztecs probably not getting out of this one. All right, I like Auburn a lot. I'm going to say that Auburn-Connecticut matchup is going to be a barn burner. All right, now we got to go. Do we still believe in Duquesne? I see them matched up against Illinois, and I have to say goodbye, Duquesne. Illinois, Terrence Shannon. I thought they got a really bad seed from this tournament committee, and I thought they got a really bad shuffle here on the way through. I think they're a lot better than people think, and keep an eye on this team because now if they get the right rhythm, they're going to be really good. You got Drake and Iowa State. I really like Drake, man. I tell you, this team's really, really, really good. I really like them. They might have a couple of guys that get on our in-the-zone draft board, but I'm an Iowa State guy. And right there they're up against. That's a really tough matchup, man. That is a really tough matchup. I'm going to take Iowa State. Okay, so now we're going to slide to UNC Mississippi State, right?
Yep. We'll go back to the West.
That's a really tough matchup for North Carolina. Again, stylistically, Mississippi State is junkyard dog, athletic, speed, all over the floor. They have size. They have athleticism. North Carolina's going to have to play a very, very highly skilled basketball game there. I'm going to give UNC to push there and let them ride. St. Mary's in Alabama. That's going to be another great game if it turns out that way. I'm going to push St. Mary's through. I'm not a big fan of Alabama. I think they probably belong in the tournament, but the seed that they got is ridiculous. They have 10, 11 losses. Michigan State has 13 or 14 losses. terrible. You knocked
Yeah.
out some really, really good teams here that could have been in. Indiana State belongs in this tournament, my opinion. They belong in this tournament. There's some other teams out here that we'll talk about at the end, maybe if we have time. But right now, we are on the New Mexico Baylor, right? Really, really tough game all the way around. I'm going to take Baylor there because that's just a junkyard dog matchup all the way through. And then you have Arizona, Nevada. Say goodbye to Coach Alford, and we're going to take Arizona. Arizona they have what it takes, to get deep into this tournament. But they also have what it takes to get knocked off quick. All right, Pete, I'm sliding over to where we have Houston and Nebraska.
Houston and Nebraska. Stand by.
Stand by. Houston, we have no problem. All right. I think Houston takes Nebraska. I think Houston, they probably would want to see Nebraska more than they want to see Texas A&M. And so I'm going to go with Houston there. I like Houston. I think they're going to recalibrate after that Iowa State loss, but you never know. Now you got James Madison and Duke. Boy, that's going to be a tough one. I'm going to ride the Dukies, though. I think John Shire can maybe get them together. NC State and Kentucky. This is no push for Kentucky, but we're going to ride Kentucky. All right, Florida and Marquette. This is a tough, tough game to pick. I don't know which way to go, but I'm picking Florida there because they're in their Southeast Conference, and they're better than people think. And I'm not sure about Kolek. I'm not 100% sure about Kolek. Purdue and Utah State. This is where you get into the heart of the tournament. This is where Purdue has to win games. This is where Purdue has to sustain. And if they can get by this game, I think they got a really good shot. So I'm taking Purdue over Utah State, although I like Utah State very much as a group. Then you have Gonzaga and Kansas. This is a game. This is going to be one of those games that matches up, in a Sweet 16 or, wherever you're going to catch them. You got Gonzaga and Kansas. I'm going to go with Kansas there because I think Bill Self's working a little something. I think he's got a little something up his sleeve. Oregon and Creighton, going to be another really, really good game. But I like this Creighton team. I've said that all along. But if they don't shoot well, Oregon will beat them. Oregon's got a lot of athletes inside. They better come packed and ready to go. Colorado, Tennessee, going to be a very, very good game, but we're going to take Tennessee there. All right, we're shaping this out, Pete. I think we're going to get through it, folks. I think we're going to make it all the way through. Okay, so now you have Connecticut and Auburn, and you have a really, really tough game there. That's a place where you might see Connecticut get bumped up, and I'm going to call it right now. I'm going to take Auburn in that game.
Wow.
Yep. That's where the Huskies are going to meet it. That's where they're going to go. That's where they're going to find the yellow snow. The Huskies go. All right. So now you got Illinois State and Iowa State. I'm staying with Iowa State, Pete. I believe in Iowa State. I believe in the Cyclones. They could bite me, but I like them. Houston and Duke. What a great game. Duke team is young, mercurial. If you saw any part of Houston, the way they practice, you'd know that they'll be ready. They'll be ready for this tournament. I'm going to take them over Duke because I just see them being the tougher team right there. I just see them being a little bit tougher. And now you got Kentucky, Florida. That's an SEC conference game. That's a SEC matchup. I'm going with Florida all the way through there because I think this Florida team's a little bit better than people think. So we are just absolutely scorching this thing right now. So you go to UNC and St. Mary's. Who's going to win that one? That's going to be a tough, tough game. And I'm going to go with UNC there. I like this Carolina team. I think the NCAA selection committee gave them a little bit of a smart ride here. We'll see what happens. But then, you got to go against this Baylor-Arizona winner. I think you're going to see Arizona go up against North Carolina there. And you'll see what goes there. We'll see what happens. Purdue, Kansas. What a matchup. Purdue and Kansas. If you get this matchup, might be one of the premier matchups of the entire tournament. If anybody is going to send Bill Self home, I believe it might be Zach Edey. We're going with Purdue. We're going with Purdue there. Okay, you got Creighton and Tennessee. This is where Creighton runs into trouble. I like this Tennessee team. I think they got a lot to offer. They have a player on this team that you're going to hear about, Dalton Knecht, Knecht. This kid can play. I'll tell you that. He's all over the place. He can shoot. He can handle. He can hit threes. If he leads that team and they get going, they could get into the Final Four. Okay, so now we have to go and see who wins and gets down really, really into the nitty-gritty here. Auburn and Iowa State. If they were to match up, all right, I think I'm going to take Iowa State right there. I really like this team. What they did to Houston in that tournament matchup the other day was nothing short of unbelievable. And I'm going to give them a shot. I really like this team. You got Houston and Florida. I think you're going to see a rematch of that game. Houston against Iowa State. Oh, boy, would that be something. All right, let's go down the other side now. You have UNC and Arizona. That's going to be a tough matchup. That's going to be a great game. I'm taking UNC all the way there. And then you have Purdue, Tennessee. Wow. You know, I don't know.
You're into it now.
I like Purdue, though. I think they have the eye of the tiger this year. But this is a place where they could really, really run into a little bit of a real tough time. But I'm going to go with Purdue. I'm going to go with Purdue. And so, therefore, we just landed our Final Four, right?
I believe so.
I don't think we
I needed to do more prep work. Holy cow.
I think we just turned into a Power 5 shill, Pete, because I think we just picked all of the pretty much all the number one seeds, except for I have Iowa State. So what we came up with was Iowa State and Houston, North Carolina, and Purdue. So got a couple of number one seeds in there.
You're the only one that doesn't have UConn going to the top.
Yeah, I think that they're
Amongst the national.
very good. But I also think what they're trying to do is go through this whole thing. And I alluded to this a little bit on the last show. We'll talk about it again a little bit. But coaches should not make themselves the focal point. Coaches should not make themselves the show. And you got Danny Hurley in Madison Square Garden jawing it up with fans and talking to the Providence fans and all this other stuff. I get it. It's hard. They're sitting right on top of you. They're saying very, very bad stuff to you. I understand all of it. And I'm not saying that I would respond a whole lot differently. But what you have now is the emphasis kind of going on to Danny Hurley, and everything is now more on Danny Hurley than on some of the great players they have on this team.
But
I
wait a
think
minute.
that's going to be a bit of a problem for them.
If the coach shoulders all that stress from the press and everything, doesn't that make the team loose?
You know, I think you called it. They're definitely loose.
You know what I'm saying, though? But if the coach is shielding
I think
them.
he created it. And so I don't think he's shouldering anything. I would agree with you that would be a really cool thing to do if that's what the coach was doing. But he created this stuff by talking to the fans, getting into it with them. And it's really hard not to answer them, really hard not to say anything. You know, I get that. You know, I've been in some bad situations. I was with a guy named Jack Bruin, you know, who had a little bit of a belly on him, you know, and people might have said some of that belly might have come from beer, you know. And when we would go into opposing gyms, you know, they weren't always nice, you know. And I had my now wife, Alexandra, with me, and we were engaged at the time, and she would sit with Jack Bruin's wife, Joan. And the entire section of the student section would jump up and chant "Six-Pack Jack" at our entire bench. And we sat there and we laughed and we took it and we just moved on. You don't engage with it. And that's where, especially in Madison Square Garden, and we also talked about this. You had a young man coming over the bleachers, coming over the scorer's table to get onto the floor during a women's brawl during the South Carolina and LSU game.
Yep.
You know? And so now you're out here starting stuff on the middle of the court and saying stuff to fans. These fans have been drinking all day. They've been out partying. They've been out doing this. They bought their ticket. They get to say what they want. But you start engaging with them, I think that's where you kind of step over the line. And I wouldn't really, you know, think that that's a good way to go, because you look at UConn's team in the middle of last year, and there's all this talk about Danny Hurley and his wife being a real big impact on him, and his demeanor changed dramatically as they went on that championship run. Now you're kind of seeing his evil twin slip back in here a little bit. You're starting to see the old Danny come back in here a little bit, and he's fighting himself a little bit because of the stress, because of everything that comes with it. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's what you're watching right now. And I would say if I was Coach Hurley, I'd try and get back into that Zen focus of just being in that place where, you're doing basketball and you're not really worried about any of the externalities. Because when you start picking up on those externalities, the focus is no longer on your team. The focus becomes on you. And I think that's where you can get clipped. And I think if you walk into the Auburn game without your focus 100% clipped up, I think you might get it. So we got our 4, Iowa State, Houston. You got UNC and Purdue. Wow.
Yeah.
Who's going to win it all if that's your Final 4?
I think Houston goes.
Pete likes Houston. I love Houston. If you saw their practices, man, how could you not love it? They work so hard. They get after it. They have such integrity. But when I watched them the other day against Iowa State, against a very good defensive team, they scored like 40-something points. They had a really, really hard time putting the ball in the basket. And so that's one of the reasons I think I might stay away from them. But they're so gritty and so tough that they could get into this thing and do exactly what you say. But right now, I kind of am going to go on the fact that you have that repeat syndrome that we were talking about with Virginia. When Virginia lost to UMBC, they came back and they won the national title the next year. They were focused. They were laser focused. They were locked in. And now you've watched this Purdue team led by, to me, the best player in the country, Zach Edey. And now they're going to get into this whole thing, and there's a lot of scope on them. There's a lot of pressure on them. But I think this team's kind of responded to that pressure and had the eye of the tiger all year long. And so I'm picking Purdue to win it all.
All right.
And I want to say that it's a little bit of a sentimental choice there because of what happened to them the following year. But I also know, as a coach, as a person who's been in this game a really long time, recalibration does count. Refocused teams do matter. And when you get a team that has been punched right dead face in the nose and gets embarrassed, humiliated like that in public, and then still has to, with pretty much that same core of guys, come back and seek redemption, man, that's a courageous story. That's why I'm riding Purdue. I think it's courageous what they did. They could fold up and go home and just say, we were number 1 in the country for a long time. No, I think they're focused. And what you're going to see from Purdue is not only do they have the best big man inside in the country, and he's going to be very, very difficult to stop, they have some really good shooters on the outside of there. And then the other day, they were in their tournament, and one of their guards almost went down and had a knee injury. And so everybody was holding their breath, much like with the Marquette fans with Tyler Kolek, just holding their breath and not being, able to breathe for a few minutes there to see, if their guy got hurt, And so one of their guards went down as well, and it looks like he's going to be okay. But that will matter with Marquette, with Tyler Kolek. That will matter with some of these teams. If you lose one of your key component players at this moment right now, that makes you wounded. That makes you vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And in the NCAA tournament, wounded and vulnerable often leads to upset. Okay, so there's some teams that, were a little bit of a surprise to me that got in. I thought Dayton, they were 24-7, and Dayton had some good wins. This is what got Dayton in. Dayton had beaten St. John's earlier in the year. Dayton had beaten a couple of other pretty good, highly ranked teams in the year. When they got to the Atlantic 10, they really struggled, and I thought that was going to be their downfall, But again, they're a team with some of these other teams that were 17-11, home and away. They had 17 home games, and they were only away 11 games, and so that's a huge, huge advantage. I'm a little surprised, that TCU, I just think that when it gets down to it, it's really, really, you're really slicing slicing fruit almost. You can go one way.
Splitting hairs, yeah.
You're splitting hairs 100%. That's exactly what I was trying to say till my brain froze up inside my head. But, you're just splitting hairs. You're just saying. So I think overall, the committee did a pretty good job. Michigan State is an absolute no for me. I didn't think St. John's belonged in. I thought Seton Hall, Providence, maybe. But some of those big conferences, as we talked about, as we alluded to earlier in the year, Pete, they ate themselves. They carnivored themselves. The ACC got clipped because they got eaten all year long by their own people. The Big East got really clipped because all year long they've been getting eaten by their own people. And you see it all the way along. And when I look at some of these conference arrangements right now, some of what transpired was NC State comes out of nowhere, wins 5 games in a row. They catch a bid that they weren't supposed to catch. And now you have some other teams in there that also caught some bids they weren't supposed to catch. When you look at Drake and Indiana State in the final of that tournament, I think both of those teams should have gotten in. Indiana State certainly had the numbers numerically, certainly had the net, certainly had all this stuff. So I think that's one of the teams that certainly I think belonged in, over Michigan State for sure. And Michigan State winding up with the seed that they wound up with, I really, really didn't get it. But most of the teams we thought, as we went into it last night, when we really came down to it, you had most of your automatic qualifiers were in. So your 32 teams were in. You could put them in. And at that same moment as well, you could also detail and look into who's only getting one bid. This is definitely a one-bid league. This is a one-bid league. Put the A-10 down as a question because I personally, as of last night, midnight, I didn't think the A-10 was going to get more than one. I really didn't think they did because Dayton wound up finishing 3rd in the league. They didn't even finish over Loyola Chicago. They didn't finish over Richmond in the league. And so I understand that when you have Duquesne comes out of nowhere and steals the bid like some of the others have done when they come out of the bleachers, so to speak, and get that bid, that impacts the rest of the field, so to speak. That impacts everybody else. Dayton, I thought their resume was okay, but some of these other teams I just, I would give the committee an A-, really. As much as I like to be critical, as much as I don't like what they use, the algorithms and stuff like that, I think they came up with a pretty complete field. I think they did a pretty good job as far as finding the teams that are in the conferences that weren't automatic qualifiers, that didn't make it over the top, and then making those really, really hard choices. Some of the hard choices, St. John's was probably a tough choice for the committee. Seton Hall, I don't think they're in here.
Nope,
are they?
I didn't see them anywhere.
No, they didn't make it. So and especially being in that power conference, and then you're going to put in Colorado State, Colorado, that people don't know that much about, but are really, really good teams. And Colorado has a couple of people on there that might be on our draft board, really, really solid players up on the top of their roster. They have a couple of guys that could be there, and so they're in a play-in game. So I think all in all, people, if you're looking at this as a product, the people should be happy with it because it's going to be a great tournament. And if you look at the Final Four that we have, I think that's not bad. Iowa, Houston, Purdue, and North Carolina, And as we said as a disclaimer up front, anything can go crazy.
Absolutely.
Anything can go crazy. All right. So there's a bunch of stuff happening on the job front as well, too, in the last 2 minutes. We're just going to conclude with some of that, talk a little bit about that because the carousel has been in full swing. And when we say carousel, that means somebody's on a horse, somebody got off a horse, and now a new person comes on with their ticket, and now they're going to ride on that horse. And so there's been some of that new ticket ride on the horse stuff already. We've had some of those jobs filled. We talked about Tim Kraft taking Western Carolina, but it's also gotten a little bit more fast and furious than that. We talked about Coach Jones taking over at Old Dominion. But DePaul, we had been very, very critical of them. I would give this higher, although it's a retread. It's what we call a retread, and it's instant coffee retread. meaning he just got fired 15 minutes ago.
Sure.
He just lost his job at Ohio State 15 minutes ago. And the guy that took over for him as the interim wound up going like 6-2 with the team coming down the end, getting the team very hot, and now actually just got signed up for the job. Diebler got the job at Ohio State. But DePaul, after years and years and years of picking the wrong people, picking the absolute wrong people, I would give this hire a pretty good grade, even though I don't like retreads because he wasn't on a horse to get off of. He already got off his horse, and now he went around, bought a new ticket, and now he's getting back on a horse again, and that's what we really don't care for when we see this. He's a very talented coach and has a lot of good future. But you also saw Louisville let go of Kenny Payne. Mike Hopkins was let go at Washington. There's a whole lot of shaking going on. There's going to be more. We had called Juwan Howard at Michigan, having a little bit of problems right there. At Michigan, right now, since Ohio State filled with Diebler, at Michigan right now, keep your eye on these two names. And this is what could happen, I think, possibly, and we'll close with this. Mick Cronin at UCLA comes to Michigan. He takes the Michigan job. And I'm going to say Tony Bennett, who's at Virginia, gets a little bit antsy about his situation at Virginia and jumps on to UCLA. Hey, folks, we'll see you Thursday. This was live. This was unbelievable. And this was our bracket. We're going to follow it. We're going to go through it with you. We're going to stay with you. Take what you like and take what you don't like and throw it away. But like we said before, we ain't real good at this. So we're hoping this year we are, because this one went on TV and all the others just went in the trash can. So have a great week, folks. We'll see you Thursday with some updates and ready to rock and roll in the tournament. Have a great week. We'll see you in the zone. Pete, go get 'em, baby.